Good morning. We are up before sunrise. I did not get enough sleep last night. My eyes are just a little bloodshot, but that seems pretty on point for what the rest of this video is talking about, so let's get into that. Our kids are now 4 and 6 years old. I can confidently say we have got through the hard part of having little kids. Not saying that when they get older things aren't going to be hard in new ways, but we have made it through being babies and toddlers, and we're solidly in the small child stage where they are starting to be really helpful and so much fun. This is the age I was looking forward to before I even had kids. If you're watching this, I'm going to assume that you probably have children and a homestead, so you already know the absolute magic that happens here. But if for some reason you are watching this video because you have one or the other and you're not sure if combining the two would be a good idea, let me say it is. There are aspects of your homestead that I don't think you would appreciate without those little eyes to show you all the special little things that you might miss. And equally with your kids, there are some really special things that you will see and you will notice in your children because of your homestead, that it just pulls right out of them and you get to enjoy and appreciate. And it's just really special. There's a lot of magic there. So don't be afraid of combining the two. I do think it's a lot more work in some ways. I do think it's harder in other ways, but I think it's really, really worth it. Before I get too far into this video, important disclosure. We do not have babysitters. We do not have family who watch our kids. We don't do preschool. We have been homeschooling the last year. That might change this year, but we have not had anyone come watch our kids. If my husband and I aren't watching the kids, then my husband is watching the kids. And if my husband's not watching the kids, I am watching the kids. We have had nobody come watch the children for us. So if you have a good community and you have people who can do that for you, like that is the obvious answer to a lot of the problems that I'm going to be talking about in this video. So if you have help, absolutely use it. Do not feel guilty for using the help because probably makes you a better parent, probably really good for your kids too. Just not that much of an option for us, so something worth mentioning. Devin and I have not been on a child-free date in over 7 years now. So when I say this advice and I talk about these things, like this is stuff we have really done, we've honed in on, we understand what the heck we're doing, and we've been really, really safe with our kids. Hope to keep it that way, knock on wood. But yeah, so this is all stuff that I'm really serious about, and because of that, I think I feel somewhat qualified to talk to you about those things. So a lot of times people are going to tell you the advice that you need to make your kids help you on your homestead or your farm or whatever it is that you have going on, which is fantastic advice for when they get to like my kids' ages. But when they're not that old yet, when they're babies and they're toddlers, that is not helpful in any way at all. And it probably makes you want to ram your head through a wall after you hear that for the third or fourth time. Help from a toddler is filled with joy and good intentions, but the speed and the method of getting those things done is atrocious. Getting your toddler to help you on your homestead, it has absolutely nothing to do with getting more help, because honestly, they are going to slow down a lot of your progress. They're going to make your days so much slower. But it's not about that. It's not about making your life easier. It's about making them feel involved. It's about making them feel needed, teaching them life skills, teaching yourself a little bit of patience, and very slowly checking off those homestead chores while taking care of your kids and making sure that they are safe. When they're really, really little, you just have to survive. And in the grand scheme of things, like that's really not that long that they're little like that, but dang, when you're in the middle of it, it feels like forever, and it feels like that is just your whole life, and it is all consuming. So if you're in the thick of it, I understand, but I promise you it does not feel that long, especially once you get out of that stage. It just feels like such a tiny little blip on the radar. For my daughter, she was really good about doing the whole baby carrier thing. She loved the baby wrap, so I would put on my wrap, I'd put it on super snug. She liked the newborn tuck even until she was like a year and a half. So I did everything with her that way. We don't have a dishwasher, so I would wash dishes that way. I would feed the animals that way. If I needed to go outside for anything, I would just take her like that. And she was happy that way. My son was not so easy. So I ended up just like physically carrying him everywhere. So my arms got really strong. I have crazy traps now. That age was just something I had to get through with him because carrying him was a lot. And I won't pretend like that wasn't just a ton of work to do. So yeah, if you're in the thick of it, I know it's really hard, but I swear it does not feel that long, especially just as soon as you get out of that stage, it feels like it was just a blip on the radar. Now, as soon as your kids just get a little bit older where you don't need to like physically hold them all the time, that's when you have to start getting creative because they are not containable. They are not happy with a lot of stuff. They still want to be close to you. They want to be involved in what you're doing. But, you know, with the homestead things, there are certain things that you need to keep them back, keep a distance to keep them safe. So you need to keep them close by because you obviously have to watch your children all the time and make sure that they are safe. But at the same time, you have to get those things done and you don't want your kids too close to you while you're doing that. So a good example of this is our wood stove and the firewood. We have one wood stove. It is our only heat source. We do not have any backup heat sources. And our first 3, maybe 4 years, I think it was just the first 3, we did not have a wood splitter. So every little bit of wood that went into that wood stove, we split by hand. Devin used a splitting maul and I used a sledge and a wedge because my aim isn't that great. So, you know, we have to get the wood done. That is non-negotiable, but you don't want kids close to those tools. You don't want them close to tools that could fall apart or fly apart, especially the wedges. Those can be dangerous when they mushroom out. I was really bad about that too. I didn't keep those cleaned up like I should have. So keep the kids away from that while you're doing that. So we would set up little play areas about 20-ish feet away from where we were working. We would set up our rounds of wood, like a piece about this big. We'd set that off to the side, and then we would get a rubber mallet or a rubber hammer, or we had a couple wooden ones too, and we would hand that to the kids so the kids could like split the wood themselves off to the side safely, and then we would get our work done. There were lots of times here at the house where I would pull up a garden hose and we had a little spot that was like we had one spot of clay here for whatever reason, and I would fill that spot up with water and the kids would just sit in there and make an absolute mess. I mean, they just went crazy in this mud puddle, but it would occupy them well enough while we were working and the puddle wasn't deep enough for them to, you know, get hurt in or anything like that. So they were entertained, they were filthy, but they were safe. We got our work done. At one point we bought our son this little toy chainsaw and it was his pride and joy and it made all the sounds, and so he had a chainsaw just like his dad's, and he would go over and he would pretend to cut his wood while we were cutting ours, and he was just barely toddling around at that size. Like, he was not walking well and he was just cutting the heck out of some wood with that. We live in northwestern Montana. We are backed up to the Kootenai National Forest. It touches 2 sides of our property. And here, firewood permits are a big thing. I think it's like $5 gets you 4-ish cords of firewood for the year. So you can get that out of the National Forest. We did that a lot. So when we did that, when we were getting our firewood, it wasn't easy. Like, the kids, we weren't at home, obviously, when we were doing that. We were in the National Forest. So something we learned to do there was we would bring a blanket and we would throw that down in the bed of the pickup truck. And while we were working just outside of the truck, I mean, within probably 20 feet or so, the kids would be contained on that blanket in the bed of the truck. We could see them, they could see us. They were away from the chainsaw, so if a blade ever came off, which it never did, but if a chain ever came off, they were safe. If a maul ever, you know, broke apart, they were not in the way of that. And they were always parked in the shade, and they were contained, and they usually had all kinds of toys and snacks. I would usually give them like a bowl of berries or something, and they would sit back there and eat and play, and they had a good time. We knew they were safe. We knew they weren't going to wander out in the woods. We knew that an animal wasn't going to pick them up because we do have, you know, bears and mountain lions, things like that here. So contained, safe, in the shade, away from the scary machinery, and happy because they're playing in the bed of the truck, just getting into everything, thinking they're really getting away with something there. Not everything is about outside dangerous equipment. There is just a lot of stuff that has to happen in the house every single day, no matter what, like folding laundry. Something that I started doing that really helped was letting the kids get involved with the laundry, even though half the time they ended up making a bigger mess and it took twice as long. Now, first of all, if you've ever been to my house, you already know this. I don't fold a lot of our laundry. I sort it out into piles and then it goes into the drawers that way. There are certain things that are important and shouldn't be wrinkly, and I will, you know, make sure that they're not wrinkly, but a whole lot of it, I don't care if I've got wrinkly underwear. So we will just sort it out and we'll throw it in the drawers as is, and that's good enough. I let go of a lot of things and a lot of, this has to be done XYZ way for whatever reason, just because it was so much easier that way, and just my sanity is worth having some wrinkly clothes. I don't care that much. It's fine. But on that same note, there are a few things that I will do. I like to have my towels rolled up, and I like to have my washcloths rolled up. So a lot of times I would just throw all my little wash rags off in a pile, and then my kids would take those little square wash rags and they would roll them up, and it would be a mess, and I would cringe every time I tucked them away to put them up, but it made the kids happy. It meant that I got to sort the rest of my laundry without them throwing it everywhere like confetti, and it worked. So just let them get involved, give them some leeway in ways that you can, and let them do what they can, even if it is sometimes physically painful to watch. This also goes hand in hand with, sweeping, vacuuming. A lot of times when they get to 2-ish years old, they love to sweep or they love to vacuum. Let them do it first, and then later on you can come through after them and get everything that they missed. But if they started out, they feel so accomplished, and it might even give you a minute to go over and maybe start supper while they are sweeping or vacuuming something. If you have kids who nap, who don't need you physically touching them to nap, you should probably use that to your full advantage. I'm only a little jealous of you. As soon as I stopped the contact naps with my kids, they just stopped napping. They weren't interested. I could not, if I was physically holding them, they would sleep. As soon as I put them down, no matter how quiet, no matter how stealthy I was, they would wake up immediately. They just did not nap without me holding them. So did not work for me. But if you have the kind of kids who can be put down for a nap and then you can step away for a little bit and get some things done, maybe with a baby monitor on you, more power to you. Don't tell me about that, because I'm going to be mad at you. When I was building my rabbit hutch, I gave each of my kids little plastic sleds, and there was just a really shallow hill right between the woodshed and our house, really close to the rabbit hutch, and I just gave each kid a sled, and it was shallow enough that they could walk up it, but it was still steep enough that they could get a little bit of momentum on those sleds. So that's how I built my rabbit hutch, was I just let them sled the whole time. I was right next to them. They were having fun. I think at that point my youngest was a little too small to carry his sled up himself, so my daughter carried them both up and they would both sled down. It worked out great. So if there's anything you can find where there's like some parallel play going on between you and them, do that. When it came to the garden, I started out with really good intentions. I thought, okay, the kids love pulling things. They love pulling on grass. I can just let them weed the garden with me and they'll be happy. It did not take long at all for me to realize that they do not understand the difference between a tomato plant and a weed. So skip that one. When they're really little, don't get them out there trying to weed your garden with you. What I did there was I set up like a water table thing in the garden with me, and they played in the water table right next to me with like heaps and gobs of sunscreen on them. And then I got to weed the garden and take care of that, and they weren't ripping up any more tomato plants that way. When it's time for me to clean out the goat barn or the chicken coop, that is not something that you want little kids involved in. It's just not clean. There's no good way to do that without them getting potentially sick or really dirty. Dirty usually doesn't bother me. Sick bothers me, so I didn't want them to get sick. So what I did, this was really helpful actually. I gave each kid a 5-gallon bucket and those little kids play shovel things, and I set them in the woodshed and I asked them to scoop up all the little bark and sawdust from there and put it in the buckets while I cleaned out the coop and the barn as quick as I could. They were really close to each other, so they would do that. They do their shoveling, I would do mine, and as soon as we were done, I let them take their 5-gallon bucket over and they would dump that in with the rabbits and the goats and the chickens, and then they suddenly had bedding, and it was free bedding that came from what was wasted in the woodshed. So the kids felt really special. They were safe. They weren't playing in animal feces, and it ended up being helpful. A couple other things I did that was helpful. My son did sometimes being the key word, like those swings. It was like a little tripod thing, and it had a little basket in it that swung back and forth. So I would set that inside the house, right inside the front door, and then if I had something I had to do outside, I would try to do it on the porch or right next to the porch so I could watch him. Other times I would set a blanket on the porch and both my kids would play there, and I would be out in the driveway really close working on whatever it was. I had a lot of little building projects I had to do, so that was a way of keeping them close and, safe, and they were still within where I could see them. So that worked. As they got older, I started moving a lot of my projects down closer to their play set, and then they could play and I would still work. We're still doing that to this day with our greenhouse. Our greenhouse and the kids' play set are like maybe 15 feet apart. So while we're working, they're playing there. They're on the trampoline, they're on the slide, they're playing in the sandbox. So they're entertained, they're safe, and they're close. Your child is only a baby for 1 year and a toddler for 2 years. This is not a lot of time. I know when you're in the thick of it, it feels like it's forever. I promise you, it is not that long. So there are some things that you might have to adjust your expectations on. I know I certainly did. Not just what you're asking to do with your kids, but what you were physically expecting of yourself, because it is a lot, especially when you've got a lot to maintain outside of your home, especially if you have a job. If your spouse is away a lot because they are working, that's another thing. There is a lot going on. This is not forever. So if there's something you have to push pause on, you're not getting rid of it forever. I know it feels like it. I'm saying this because I felt like when I was pushing pause on things, I just felt like I was saying goodbye forever. That is not true. It really is just a temporary thing. You can pick it up later. No matter what that thing is, I guarantee you can pick it up later on. It's not permanent. Just adjust your expectations, give yourself grace, and understand that what's going on now is not forever. Now, here's some advice that people mean to give you, but I don't think it comes out right, because a lot of times they'll say things like, sleep when the baby sleeps. Well, I will cook dinner when the baby cooks dinner, and I will feed the animals when the baby feeds the animals, and I will wash dishes when the baby washes the dishes. Now that is somewhat valid advice when you've just got one child, because it's not too hard to just lay down, especially when you're doing the whole contact nap thing. You can just lay down together and take a nap, and it's really easy. But after you have 2 kids or more, I can't imagine having more, but after you have 2 kids, that's not possible. You have so much stuff you need to do. You're so far behind. So when your baby's sleeping, you cannot sleep with them. There's just stuff you're going to have to get done. So the advice you should get is adjust your sleep schedule as needed. If you've got a kid who naps and you can take advantage of their nap time to get things done, do that. If your baby somehow likes to sleep in the mornings, you can maybe wake up a little earlier than they do and get things done that way. For me, when my kids were really little, I like getting up early in the mornings, but I couldn't do it with my kids. I just absolutely couldn't. So I would put them to sleep. I would sneak away. It took forever. I remember some nights it would take like 1 or 2 hours before I could actually sneak away from them once they fell asleep. But once they fell asleep and I could sneak away, I would sneak away, and that's when I would get things done. I worked from home, so I would come down here, I'd sneak down to my office, and I would get my work done then. I would sometimes work until 4 or 5 in the morning, and then I would get up again at like 8 or 9-ish in the morning with the kids. So I really didn't get a lot of sleep, but I just adjusted things as I needed to make it work. So it's not glamorous, it's not great, but when you are the one who is mostly taking care of the homestead, or you're the one who is mostly taking care of the kids, you're going to have to get kind of creative with how you move your schedule around. Even if it's not the way that you've usually done things, you just might have to change things around for a little bit. Remember that this is temporary. You're not going to have to do this for the rest of your life. It's just for now. While we're on the topic of sleep, let's talk about your health in general. You probably are going to have to sacrifice a lot of your sleep, but that doesn't mean you need to say goodbye to everything else health related. So when possible, move more, eat healthy, and drink a lot of water. Take time to shower, even if you have to bring your baby in the bassinet in the bathroom with you, even if you have to have them sitting on the floor of the shower with you. I've been there. I know what that's like. You might have to get creative with a lot of this stuff, but make sure that you are taking good care of you too, because even though these are just a few short years that it feels like you're going crazy, it's still years of your life. So you need to take really good care of yourself, so that way you are going to be able to keep going once they get past that toddler stage, and so that way you are doing a really good job of taking care of your kids. Even when I was extremely sleep deprived, on the days that I took time to lift weights, walk on the treadmill, drink plenty of water, I kept forgetting to drink water, but on the days that I remembered to drink my water, I felt really good. I was already eating healthy. We were already eating mostly whole foods. I just ate too much of them. That's a whole thing for another video. But when I was doing those things right, I felt so good. Even when I was running on like 3 or 4 hours of sleep, which was brutal. I won't lie. I won't say that that wasn't hard, because it was. But when I combined that with those other things, it made the day so much more bearable. I was much happier. I was much more patient with my kids. So certainly worth just taking a little bit of effort and putting into those things whenever you can. We're in northwestern Montana. We get a lot of deep snow. Wrangling your kids into their snowsuits, wrangling them into warm clothes is a whole workout on its own. So a lot of times for me to just be physically active, now don't get me wrong, taking them outside with me to go feed the animals was great. That was good for my mental health, good for theirs too. But just to take them outside to work out every day, especially in the winter, not really feasible. So I took my baby gate. I had a baby gate that went around the wood stove, and I had another one that I put around my treadmill. And I had another, and the treadmill one could be moved over, and I would put it around where I lifted my weights. So my kids could be awake and around me while I was still working out, but I knew they weren't going to stick fingers in treadmills, and I knew they weren't going to be anywhere near me where I could accidentally drop my weights, my barbells on them. So I got to move my body. They were safe. We were all inside, which isn't ideal, but you know, do what you can with what you have. So maybe consider getting just a few cheap pieces of workout equipment to keep in your house, and find a way to kind of baby proof, even if you're like physically putting yourself in baby jail in your little baby gates. Do what you can with that. I really do think that will help you out a lot. Now, this is something I wish I had done a better job of when my kids were littler, but that was being more involved with community. If you have like library readings, that's great. Our local area, we have a 0 to 5 group that has been phenomenal. That was really helpful when my kids were a lot smaller. Every Wednesday we would take them down to the community center, and the kids would play together, and us adults would sit and talk to each other. That was great. What else was there? Sometimes there's like baby-friendly movie nights at the theaters. You've got apps like Peanut, Hello Mom, Mom Life, Dad App, Moms Meetup, and Meetup. You can do those to meet other parents. Sometimes there's things like rodeos, quilt shows, things that you would think are more for like adults, but then you take your kids out, and I mean, there's obviously children everywhere. So you're getting out, you're exposing them to other people. You get to maybe have an interaction with another adult. That's great too. Anything community related though can be really, really helpful, especially when you are in the thick of having really small kids. Make an effort to hang out with other homesteaders. If they happen to have kids your kids' age, that's great. If they don't worry about it. Because honestly, if their children are older, especially if they're grown or they've got even grown grandchildren, they are going to be so loving and so supportive, and they're going to have so much good information to share with you, and they're going to shower your kids with love. So don't feel like you only have to have homesteaders who have kids your age, because you don't. Your kids are going to receive so much love and affection from these older people who miss that stage of life. So you can learn a lot from them. Maybe you can do something in return to help that homesteader out as a thank you for being so kind to you and your children. But they have a lot to offer your children. They have a lot to offer you. Hopefully you can do something in return to say thank you to them, because they are invaluable. Now, this next one can be a little controversial. That's okay. That is to invest in kind animals when you have small kids. Before I had kids, my tolerance for mean animals was so high, I did not care. I would just put up with anything. I didn't mind. But I swear, as soon as I was pregnant, that switch flipped. I was so done with them. Mean roosters, into the stock pot. If you've got a billy goat who's acting like a billy goat, time to butcher him. We'll start over with the younger billy goat that is sexually mature but not acting like a jerk. I cycled through billy goats quicker. I wanted them to be mature enough to breed, but I didn't want them to be at that age where they were ruddy and nasty. So just the tolerance for the bullshit was gone. It's not just about keeping the kids safe, even though that is like 90% of it. The other 10% of that is that myself and my husband cannot afford to get hurt. We need to be there for our kids. We need to be making an income. We have things we need to get done. And if an animal hurts us, that is going to really put a damper on that. So We don't keep unsafe animals even for our own sake anymore, because we just have things that need to get done and we do not have a tolerance for that anymore. Now, when I say that I don't keep mean animals around, you might think that I'm really on it about getting rid of animals and I don't keep animals here for very long. Not true, because if they are sweet to my children, if they are good, they get to stay here much, much longer than I intended. And I'm okay with that. Not only are gentle animals just a joy to work with, but that means that their offspring is probably going to be better tempered as well. So if they're good, they get to stick around, they get to have babies of their own, and we're just going to keep that up, because even when my kids are older, I have now been spoiled into having kind animals, and I want to keep that going forever and ever. So we have no mean roosters, we have no mean goats. All of our rabbits are sweet. You can stick your fingers in there and they don't bite you. Most of the rabbits, especially the babies, like our kids handle them all the time. You can pick them up, they're not going to scratch you. That's a big deal for me. I've been spoiled and my kids have been spoiled. I would like to keep that going forever now. So if you're not kind, you're not sticking around. And if you are kind, you can probably stick around a whole lot longer than I wanted you to. Something else I did was letting go of schedules. Now I will say some people, their kids just thrive on a good schedule and they're not happy when they deviate away from that. My kids weren't so much that way. Every day was a little bit different. Sometimes it was just hard to get things done. So what I did was I made it so that way my animals weren't suffering if I didn't get outside by a certain time. What I mean by this was putting on automatic coop doors, so that way my chickens could come and go as they please. As long as it was, daylight, they could come and go. I didn't have to be up super early to let them out, and I didn't have to worry about putting a baby down or taking them outside with me when it started getting dark outside to shut the coop door. Automatic feeders, automatic waterers. When I feed my rabbits, I make sure that they have enough for like a day and a half, 2 days worth of feed at a time. So if I'm having a hard time getting out the door, I try to go out at least 2 or 3 times a day. It doesn't matter what time I get outside, everyone still has food, everyone still has water, everything is moving smoothly. So no matter what happens in the house, my animals are still safe and happy. When you're in the thick of the chaos, it's really easy to mix up your needs and your wants. So something that I did was I kept a list of must-do todays and a list of would-be-nice-to-do todays. And the must-dos got done no matter what, and the want-to-dos, if we happen to get to that, fantastic. If we didn't, oh well. Examples of the must-dos: feeding yourself and your children, feeding your animals, checking on their water. For me, I had must read a book to my kids. And then I had my kids must see me reading something, so that way they associate reading is just something that adults do. Which now that they're older, I'm so glad I did that. That I did something right. So there was reading to them, seeing them, letting them see me read. Then there was also letting them see me work out. Now this wasn't important that they saw me working out, but it was important that I just got the workout in. Sometimes they saw me, sometimes they didn't, whatever. But those were my must-dos. And then we had our list of things that it would be nice if it got done, but it's not the end of the world if it doesn't. Things like weeding the garden, washing the dishes, washing the laundry. Now, I'm not saying that this can be pushed off indefinitely, because it certainly can't, but if it doesn't happen exactly on this day, it's fine. It's not bad. It can be pushed off till tomorrow and everything will still be mostly functional. Make other aspects of your life easier whenever you can. For me, a lot of the time this ended up being food related, because I don't know, making food has been it's sometimes so hard. I don't know, it just is. Meal planning is when you know what you're going to eat in advance, whether it's a week or a month in advance. Meal prepping is when you make that food in advance and then you refrigerate or freeze it for later. Something I did a lot was doubling or tripling meals. So you make, instead of 1 portion of dinner tonight, you make 2 or 3 portions, and then I usually freeze the rest. I usually don't refrigerate it, because if I refrigerate it, I forget about it and then it goes bad. But if I freeze it and label it, it's an important part, because I usually think, oh, I'll be fine, I'll remember what that is, and then I don't remember what that is, and then later on we're eating mystery dinner because I had no idea what I put in that container. So freeze it and label it. That's a huge blessing for later on, when you're sick, when you're tired, when you've just had a really hard day and you can't get it together and dinner needs to happen really fast because everyone's cranky. That's great. You can just throw it in the microwave, throw it in the oven, something like that, and you're good to go. Homemade menus are so underrated. I made one for my family of just basically every recipe I knew how to make. I'm not saying that I wrote down the whole recipe. I didn't. I literally wrote down like spaghetti and meatballs, enchiladas, cheeseburgers. Like I would just forget all the time what kind of foods I even knew how to make. So I would just make a huge master list of everything that I knew how to make, and then being able to just reread that and be like, oh yeah, that's an option. Oh yeah, we can make quesadillas for dinner. Oh yeah, we can make burritos for dinner. That being able to reference that and remember meals that you'd forgotten about, so unbelievably helpful. I hate deciding what to make for dinner, and just having that to read through and pick from has been so freaking helpful. Now, this whole video, all the ideas from this, I wrote down a couple years ago, like 2 or 3 years ago. So now when I'm going through and like looking at this list, I can't believe that this was ever not a part of my life. But one of the things that really helped me at the time was doubling my bedding. For a long, long time, I just had like one set of sheets for every single bed, which we have. I think we have 5 beds in our house. It's kind of a lot. We have extras, guests come out and things. So anyway, I did not have duplicates of our sheets and stuff for all the beds. And I just wanted to keep it really minimal. I wanted to be a minimalist. I wanted to be like super light and whatever. Just get the doubles. Like double everything up if you can. I know it can be kind of expensive when you're starting out, but double everything up because kids are messy. When you're taking care of kids, you can be messy too because you're sleep deprived and whatever. So when someone spills a drink on a bed or someone pees the bed, because that happens when you've got little kids, having something that is just automatically ready to go on there instead of it having to go through the washer and dryer, it's so much easier to just have a second set of sheets to throw on there right away, and no one is sleeping on a plain mattress with like some random quilt you can find. Like it's so much easier if you have extra sets of sheets. Doom baskets were a lifeline for me. Again, I wrote this little like thing of things that were helpful for me when my kids were little, and I mentioned Casey Davis's book, How to Keep House While Drowning. She is amazing. I love that book. If you were in the thick of it with kids, highly recommend that book. You should read it. But Doom Basket stands for Didn't Organize, Only Moved. That was life-changing for me. So I just had random wicker baskets all over the house that I had thrifted. And if there was something that didn't really belong in the living room, but I didn't know what to do with it, I'd just throw it in the Doom basket. And later on, when I was feeling less overwhelmed because suddenly my house was clean, because all that random stuff that was just laying around was suddenly tucked away neatly in this basket, the house felt clean, the kids were calmer, and when I got a moment alone, I would go through the basket and put things where they actually belong. But that was so helpful. I wish I had done that much sooner, because it just completely changed the way that I handled my kids and handled having a dirty house. By the way, when you do get time away from your kids, whether they're sleeping or playing or whatever, seeing a basket like this size that's just got random little things in it that need to be put away is so much less overwhelming than a whole living room that's just got random stuff strewn everywhere. 2 activities that helped me survive the chaos of toddlerhood, mostly with my sanity intact, were water and outside time, and sometimes water while being outside. I don't know what it is about little kids and water and outside time, but if they are having a bad time, you can add water, or you can take them outside, or you can do both, and it will fix a lot. Now, like I said, we are in Montana. It is kind of hard to be outside, but we would bundle up when we could, and we'd go out, and if we couldn't, then the kids got a bath. And a lot of times the bath didn't even have soap in it because it might be their second or third bath of the day. But I would just put them in just plain water, and I'd let them have their toys, and they would sit there and they would play. And for whatever reason, that was like the reset button for the kids. Whether they were like overly tired and they couldn't sleep, or they were just cranky and I couldn't figure out why, it didn't matter. Being outside or playing in the water really helped. On that note of the water, I ended up getting, I think it was like a clear, it's like a $6 or $7 clear liner thing from Walmart for your shower. And I did not put the fancy fabric, what is that? There's like a curtain and then the liner. I didn't put the curtain on there. I just used the liner that was totally clear. So my kids, when they were old enough to sit up on their own and be safe, I would put them in the bathtub. I would close the clear one so I could watch them. And then I would sit on the toilet, like put the lid down and just sit on the toilet, and I could be near them, but they weren't splashing me, because when you've got little kids that age, it's exhausting to have them just splashing you in your bathroom, and then you're constantly wiping up water. So that contained them. That contained most of the water. I could see them the whole time. They were safe that way. And I wasn't being, me and the floor weren't soaking wet. Now, this one can be a little bit controversial. I'm completely fine with that. If you are against it, feel free to tell me in the comments. I really don't take any offense to you disagreeing with this one, which is screen time. Now, when they're little, like, they do not need much screen time. I don't think it's all that healthy for their little brains to have that. But when they get to like the older parts of toddlerhood, and especially when they become like small-ish kids now, I see that as immensely helpful, not just for me, but for them. Screens are going to be a part of their life, and I think that there needs to be some self-regulation there, and I would rather them learn that when they're younger than when they're older. So I let my kids have screen time. I let them do what they want, and it seems like when they very first got access to it, they wanted to be on there a lot, and I think a lot of kids are like that, and it scares the heck out of parents when their kids are just seemingly addicted to the screen. But then after a while, the novelty wears off. They're not quite as interested in it, and then they want to go outside. They want to go play. They want to color. It's just not that big of a deal, and they kind of learn how to regulate it on their own. I'm not saying all kids are like that, because I just have two. I only have two kids. My two kids are that way. Maybe not every kid is that way, but they seem to self-regulate. They can handle it pretty well. They'll play for a little bit, and then they want to go do something else. So I like that. I would much rather them learn that now than when they are older, when they've got more responsibilities like homework or a job that they need to keep and maintain. I like that they're learning that now. There should be limits to it. There should be lots of parental security, and you should know what they're watching, and you should be involved. But I don't see that as a bad thing, and I do think it can be a helpful tool for you and your kids. Now, as far as TV shows go, here are some of our favorites. We liked Bluey, We Bare Bears. I liked a lot of the PBS shows, both old and new. Anything that was on PBS Kids, great. I love it. And then when it comes to video games, as soon as she was 4-ish, I think, I let my oldest daughter have access to Minecraft, local only, not online, Spyro, and I think there was like a Disney Adventures thing. And she did really well on that. She started reading really quickly. I turned on subtitles. There's like a reader for them. She started reading very early because of that, so definitely has some perks there. Make it easier for yourself to not procrastinate. If you're not someone who naturally procrastinates, this one doesn't apply to you. Definitely applied to me. I broke a ton of bad habits in myself when my kids were little bitty toddlers. I don't know why, but that was just a great time for me to completely reset the way that my brain works and reset the way that I live my life. I'm really grateful to myself for making those changes then, but I completely killed the part of myself that procrastinated during that time. One thing I did was I would set like one thing per day. Remember I mentioned the need to do todays and the want to do todays. Well, I would usually go through and pick like one good thing that I wanted to get done that day, and for whatever reason, just choosing one instead of having a huge laundry list of things that needed to happen, just having one thing that I wanted to do made it that much more attainable for myself. Another thing that really helped me out here was making fewer decisions per day. So like I mentioned, I had like a mom's menu, so I made a list of every meal I knew how to make. That made the decision making easier. I still had to make the decisions, but it didn't feel like I was pulling them out of thin air anymore. I went through and I downsized my wardrobe a lot. I've always been one who's kept like a really basic capsule wardrobe. If you've watched my videos, you know that like I have like maybe 6 t-shirts that I own and I wear. So keeping that pared down a lot takes a lot of decisions out of it. I eat the same meals basically every day. Breakfast and lunch is usually the same. Dinner might be a little bit different. My routine is pretty similar. There's not a lot of decision making that goes on anymore, which makes it easier for me to not procrastinate things, because I tend to think about things way longer than I should. So taking a lot of the questions out of it helps me a lot. Okay, during this time, your kids are super fun, even though they can be a little difficult. So start leaning into more kid-friendly activities. Foraging was a good one for me. You need to be careful of things like, if you have poisonous plants around you, like hemlock, poison ivy, poison oak, be careful with those. Other than that, though, that's a great one. Like, you can take your kids out and they can find, like wild strawberries, the raspberries, blackberries. You got to be careful for the thorns, but that's a good exercise in those fine motor skills, and it's fun. They usually eat way more than they pick, but it's all a good time. Cooking and baking are another good one. Again, going to be a lot slower with them helping you, but it's so fun. My kids loved being a part of that. They still do. They're 4 and 6 years old. They still think that's the coolest thing ever, is to cook and bake with mom. A lot of times I would just get out a measuring cup and I would measure out the ingredients, and then they could just dump it in the bowl. Like, their whole job was dumping it in the bowl and then stirring it, and then inevitably go getting the broom and sweeping up whatever we dumped out of the bowl on the floor and on the counter. So feeding animals was a big one. Cleaning the house was another one, because if you have animals, if you've got the homestead, your house is going to get dirty really fast. Even if you are like us and you take your shoes off every time you come in the house, still gets unbelievably, unfathomably dirty in here. I don't know how that happens so quickly, but it does. So sweeping and mopping together is great. Wiping down counters together is great. You can go walk your property boundaries together. Probably less so about checking the fence and more so about just getting your bodies outside and moving. Either way, it's a great time. It's really good for you. It's good for the kids. Seed bombing is a really fun one. You just hand your kids a whole bunch of seeds. You can go down to your local feed store and you can pick up black sunflower seeds, for example, that's meant to feed birds. And you could just give them a handful and tell them to throw it out in the wind, and they will throw it everywhere. And every time you see a sunflower out in your yard or out in your garden, after that, it is just a happy little reminder of when your kids were really little. Collecting eggs, picking produce, those are really fun with the kids. That's always super easy. It feels very gratifying. Another one, though, telling on myself here, was I would send my kids to go catch an animal, and now you got to teach your kids to be gentle. You don't want them to be mean. You don't want them to be chasing your animals all over the place. You don't want like chaos. But if you can say, hey, go get that goat, go bring that goat over here, and you see your little kid out there toddling over and grabbing that goat and just reaching under the little face and dragging him back up to the barn. Oh, that is precious. It's cute. You're desensitizing your animals. You're burning some energy on your kids. Your kids and your animals are bonding a little bit. That's pretty precious. Highly recommend that one. Other good ones are getting your kids to groom your animals. I think that one is so underrated, because that's how the animals bond with each other a lot of times. So if you can teach your kids to be really gentle in the way that they are grooming them, 1, the animal's getting somewhat clean. 2, it's giving your kids something productive to do. And 3, they are bonding with each other, and that animal is learning to like the little kids. They're going to be much better to any kids that come on the property, and your kids are just going to appreciate that animal that much more. And lastly, you can combine the best of being outside and playing in water with watering the plants or filling water troughs. I can tell you from experience, don't expect most of that water to end up in your garden bed or to end up in that water trough, but you can expect a very happy child and some muddy little feet when they get done with that. So that's pretty much my best advice for keeping little kids on the homestead. Something that I don't think we talk about enough that probably should be mentioned is this is a lot easier when you know that there is an end in sight. So for me, I knew that I just wanted to have 2 kids. I could not have my children naturally because of the way my silly anatomy is. So I had to have 2 C-sections. So I asked during my second C-section if they would give me a tubal ligation. My doctor was amazing. She went through and she completely removed the tubes, burned the end. She said, absolutely no more children for you. I said, thank you. So knowing that my 2 kids were it and I was not going to be doing this again was helpful, because it really showed me just how precious and fast that whole experience was going to be. And now that I've made it through babyhood and we've made it through toddlerhood, that time really was special. And there are lots and lots of times that I wish I could go back and experience it again. I don't want more kids. I just wish that I could go back and enjoy that time with my kids all over again. I really hope this was helpful to you. If you have older kids, you've made it through the toddler stage, you've made it through the baby stage, please drop some of your best advice for other people who are in the thick of it and probably struggling. That would be much appreciated. So thank you so much for being here. I will talk at you again next Monday. Bye.